Well, hey,
For
should we jump
sure.
into some of these questions? We got them.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're coming in. So,
Yeah,
hey,
we
if you
probably
guys have
should.
questions, put them in there, and I'm taking notes and writing them down, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Chris Lynn asks, where do you start when you want to open a laundromat? Chris Lynn asks, where do you start when you want to open a laundromat? Chris wants to open a laundromat and wants to know where a good starting point is.
Where to start? I think the first thing you have to do is look at your business acumen, your business experience, and your financial situation. I think your capital situation is a big factor in where you start.
Mm-hmm.
And it was for me. So I think you have to start there and see what are your capacities, what are your capabilities, because if you are independently wealthy, that can be a good thing because the world is open to you as far as opportunities, but it can also be a really bad thing because it's an opportunity to make $1 million mistakes. And if it's your cash on hand, nobody's going to stop you. Nobody's going to tell you can't do it.
Yeah,
so that would be where I would start.
I think it's a good point. The podcast episode that's coming out this next coming week, the guest and I were talking, and he was building his first one out, but his cost ended up being 80 grand more than budgeted out of pocket. And so I think that, assessing your financial situation early on and what your plan is a huge deal, because costs can get you. And the worst thing in the world that can happen is you buy a laundromat or you build a laundromat or you open a laundromat, and, within the first 6 months you run out of money and that's it, right? Like then you're done, right?
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you have that capital. I would say too, obviously you want to be learning as much as you can. There's tons of places to be learning that stuff. Dave at laundromatmillionaire.com has stuff. Laundromatresource.com has stuff. The CLA has stuff. Yep. There's a lot of other sites that have information. So, but you do also want to be careful who you're learning from. Yeah. And always, figuring out what experience do they have and what's their motivation for sharing that information, because that's a big deal. But also on top of that, I would say you need to start looking at laundromat for sale. So whether that's even just Googling laundromat for sale near me, and start getting a feel for, what numbers are going to be presented to you. How do you read a pro forma? How do you read a financial sheet? How do you analyze a deal? How do you determine, the health of the laundromat? How do you value a laundromat? Those things will be better if you practice them. Even if you can't find a laundromat for sale near you, just find one for sale and practice figuring out how much you would offer on a laundromat, even if you don't have any intention of buying it. I think that's a good place to start too.
So I think we both agree the distributor is important and valuable. What are a couple quick things that you look for, or you would tell a client to look for I always tell people, my clients, to interview, to sit down with, have lunch in person, face to face. Obviously, one thing I would throw out there is to ask for a few referrals, talk to people that have helped them be successful. What would you say as far as how do you find a good distributor?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I get asked all the time, do you have a list of distributors? Because people even have a hard time finding them. And I don't have a list, but I would like to make a list. So maybe I'll put that on my to-do list, making a list of distributors, because I think that would be helpful for one. But I think your advice is good. People will always let you know the best parts of themselves or the best parts of what they want you to think about them. But getting references is a big deal because other people will let you know. And what I try to get a feel for is their knowledge of the industry. And so asking them, about their experience, their knowledge, about the industry, because you want to take advice from people who know the industry. They don't necessarily have to be owners themselves, but you want them to know the industry. And I'm trying to get a feel for their integrity. And the reason for that is because you're going to be investing a lot of money with these people. And so part of that is, I always tell people, talk to multiple distributors from multiple brands. Even if you know what brand you want to go with, meet some other ones, see what they have to say in terms of machine mix, in terms of price, all of that stuff. And it gives you just more data points to help you determine if a particular distributor is someone you want to work with or not.
Yeah. When it comes to looking for distributors, a couple things just come to mind for me. The CLA has resources. I know at least once a year they put out like a distributor's issue from the magazine, which is, there's not a lot of articles and that kind of stuff in it. It's mostly distributors, Vendrite, Vision vendors, different. I'm sure it's probably advertisers and members of the CLA. But I don't think that's a bad place to start. I mean, not every distributor is associated with a CLA, is a member, and that doesn't make them a bad distributor. But if they're active in the industry with an organization like CLA, I think that's a good sign, generally speaking. Another thing that I did early on that I didn't know any different was I drove about an hour and a half from my house and started just going into laundromats and seeing if the owners would talk to me. And some of them booted me and some of them talked to me, and they would tell me about their distributor. And I figured, well, I'm far enough away from home where if I tell them where I'm looking to buy a laundromat, then they're not going to feel threatened by me. And that, I guess I was kind of naive because some of them didn't believe me, but I did get pointed in the right direction with a few local distributors in Cincinnati, and I was able to talk to them. But I do think that there's more resources now, especially digitally speaking, distributor lists and things like that, than there was 10 years ago. And I'm sure there was before that. And then the other thing is, I know if you contact the manufacturers themselves, that they will tell you who the local distributor is that services your area. So, I mean, if you contact Alliance, tell them you're in Cincinnati, they're going to tell you who their Speed Queen and Hips distributor is. And I'm sure it's the same for Dexter and Continental and all the different companies. So I think that's a good place to start.